Hello, I'm Liz Zorab of By the Farm. Welcome to my podcast, Gardening Demystified.
This is a By the Farm podcast.
Today I've got Huw Richards with me. Welcome, Huw.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Excited to be here, yes.
So Huw is my co-host on a regular basis on this podcast, but today he's here.
I'm just here. I'm
you
being
are here.
Interviewed, I think. Am
Well, I think interview might be a bit of a glamorous term. I think
interrogated.
Yeah, that would be more like it. No, we're
Yeah.
just going to have a chat.
All right. That'll be a first time that we actually have a chat. Oh, dear.
So for those of you who are not familiar, Huw Richards has a small gardening channel. He might have knocked out a couple of books. He is my gardening hero at the moment.
Oh.
Yeah, you are. So Huw has...
You can't have me cry right at the start of a podcast episode.
I think I can.
Okay. I mean, it is yours
Huw
after
has
all.
just published his second book called Grow Food for Free. But that's not why you're here. You're here so we can just have a natter.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. I love going on podcasts. It's just so fun. It's a different way of being able to apply information and chat. And it's also informal as well, because usually YouTube videos aren't kind of informal, but this is just such a nice way to present information. And as an avid podcast listener myself, I love being involved in these things. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So we're going to pause about halfway through, make a fresh cup of tea.
Amazing.
Say, I know that you get interviewed and people feature you on a regular basis. So what is the question that you get asked the most?
Oh, I like it. The question that I get asked the most has definitely got to be, what is my favourite vegetable? And this is probably the most infuriating thing ever. Because the thing is, my favourite vegetable changes season by season. And I think it's actually a really boring question, because I've already answered it so many different ways before. And it's like I've spent too much time in my life talking about my favourite vegetable. There's far more interesting and useful things to talk about.
I'm not sure it is, because for the person who's asking you, it's the first time. And therefore, probably for people who are listening or watching, it's the first time.
So I suppose...
So I'm not going to ask you.
I suppose I should just volunteer myself to answer it.
I think you should.
Okay, I'm going to go with the first thing that pops into my mind, and I'm going to say beetroot this time. I think last time it was peas, but today it's beetroot. Beetroot is my favourite vegetable at the moment.
Brilliant. And I also know you're quite keen on beetroot wine.
Oh, yes. I know this amazing person called Liz Zorab, who's... quite an expert when it comes to making fruit and vegetable wines, and I have to say, beetroot wine, amazing.
Brilliant.
And the rhubarb wine I had last night, thank you very much. I'd like to buy a bottle.
Well, I can't sell it, but I can give you a bottle.
Oh gosh,
of wine.
yeah, you're not licensed.
So thank you for telling me about your favourite vegetable, and I won't ask you again until the next time.
Oh. Thanks, Liz. You're always so understanding.
So Huw, you're in your early 20s. You have packed in an awful lot of career in a fairly short space of time. If you weren't doing gardening, where do you think your career would have taken you? Can you even imagine life without this as your career?
That is an excellent question, and it's actually something that I've thought about quite often. With thinking about this, I felt that I would have probably always have gone down something along the creative route, and probably something to do with sustainability. So something like sustainable architecture or something like that was a possibility. And I had many years as a child thinking about being an architect. And then I discovered you had to be pretty good at maths, and that kind of really put me off. Because I just wanted to draw and create and design and let someone else do all the complicated works on working out if it's actually structurally possible and safe to do so. So yeah, it would have been something along the lines of that, staying very creative and arty, and I'm not too sure. That is probably the closest thing. But to be honest, when I was 15, 16, I'd passed 1 million views on YouTube, and I thought to myself, hang on a minute, that there is something here. It's been my hobby, but it's turning into something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to do A-levels, but then I'm going to take a year out and see how I go, which was actually met with a lot of negativity by a lot of people. Fortunately, not my close family, but there were quite a few friends and teachers and people who thought that that was the completely wrong thing to do because you have to have a degree or you're going to be a failure.
How nice that you've proved them so wrong.
Oh, it feels great.
So, can you share with me the feelings and the thought process that you went through during that year after your A-levels, where you were really trying to establish yourself as a gardening journalist?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had summer off because I was like, I had A-levels, so my excuse was I've got to rest, which I slightly regret because I missed a lot of videoing opportunity. However, I did keep on going, but the thing that when I got out of education, I was like, wow, I don't know what to do with myself, because the only time before that I was out of education was before I started when I was like 2 or 3 years old. So it was a whole new experience. And I realised that I hadn't really created a strategy. I just thought, I'll just make some videos and that'll be it. So it really made me go and focus on things and to make sure that I had a bit of dreams and goals to work towards. And it started growing, and I'm not really sure how it happened, but by luck, I think somehow some journalist had seen my YouTube channel and it was growing, you know, it was a decent size back then, and they wanted to share it. So suddenly within 2 weeks I was in the Times, the Mail, the Guardian, and everything suddenly went crazy. And the turning point though was getting an email from a publisher.
How exciting.
Yeah, it came, and I remember it was like 7 or 8 in the morning. I'd woken up and there was this email waiting for me on my phone, and they said, we really love what you're doing, come to London and we'd love to discuss doing a book with you. Don't worry if you don't have any ideas as of yet, I'm sure we'll think of something. And I went with an idea of veg in one bed, and ended up they loved it, and it ended up being the top grossing gardening book in the UK of 2019. So it's amazing how things go.
That's amazing, Huw. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a very surreal thing though. Still, it's strange. It's hard to comprehend in a way.
So book 2 came out this week, and I spoke to you on Thursday and said, how does it feel today? And surreal was what you said.
Yeah, life is surreal, honestly, especially, and you'll understand this, what we're doing, especially on the media, social media side of things. No 2 day is ever the same, and so many opportunities come and go all of the time, and sometimes you kind of like look at your statistics and you're a bit bewildered, and it's like, where does this come from? And it's kind of highs and lows, but surreal is... So
how do you choose from all those opportunities that are presented to you? How do you choose which ones to take up? And how do you choose which ones to take up that won't impact on your gardening? Because one of the things I know is that you don't just make videos, you don't just write books, you actually help feed your family. Yeah,
it's a cracking question, actually. It's difficult because if you think about it, if you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So if it is yes to help out with a new project, you could be saying no to family time, for example, or no to me time, no to being able to do some sport. The tricky thing is everyone talks about this work-life balance, but I've just turned 21 and I've got a lot of energy, and I kind of feel like because it is my passion, I'm kind of pretending that that's also my hobby, so it's my work and my hobby at the same time, which I don't know how ethical that is to myself, but I enjoy it. And Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is just trying to think about reputation. And there's a couple of times in the past where I haven't, because I saw the figures that were offered and I was like, oh yes, let's go for it, because any young person would do that, because it's all new and exciting. But yeah, it's every month I feel like I'm learning new things in terms of what to approach, and I'm still really bad at judging when to say yes or no, but I'm learning to trust my gut a lot more, because it has been right on almost every occasion, good and bad.
Brilliant. That's great. It's good that you have that inner feeling.
Yeah, and that I've just got to have faith in it, really. Even if it doesn't seem to make sense in the time. It's I don't know, it seems to be good at predicting things.
Nice. So you mentioned just now about sport. And I know that you don't actually just create videos, write books and garden the entire time. You have another social life element as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the sports that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I used to play loads of rugby back in the day. And I was in the top league. I was vice captain for my team and in the top school rugby league in Wales when I was like 17, 18. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I had a couple of knocks on the head and I was just thinking, I'm wanting to do a lot of presenting and gardening. It doesn't really quite work. So I do still grieve rugby a lot, actually. It is quite painful not being able to do it. But I've replaced it with, I've always played tennis. I love tennis. Mm-hmm. But a friend of mine who did a bit of an apprenticeship with me a couple of years ago, he played squash and he's got me into squash now and I love it. I play it every single week. And then to get a bit of the thrill, I also do a lot of mountain biking and outdoor swimming. So it's a lot of things.
But real life stuff, it's not all gardening.
No, real life stuff. Oh, absolutely. And the cinema. Love the cinema.
You love the cinema.
Absolutely.
What sort of films do you like? I
love horror films. Yeah, I just love the challenge of sitting through an 18-rated film. And
wow.
I know.
I'm really surprised.
No one knows this.
I think everyone knows it now.
They do.
So earlier on today we were talking about the process of lifelong learning and continuous learning. So let's just throw it open, what do you do to learn and what sort of things are you keen to learn? Sorry, loads of questions. And are you aware of your knowledge gaps?
Great questions. You might have to remind me if I forget to answer one of them. I think I'll start in terms of how I learn. So I want to be completely honest. I've never gone to horticulture college. I haven't done a gardening course. I think the closest thing that I've done that's come to that is the 2-week permaculture design course. But that is kind of a lot more expansive. It's not just gardening.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of the principles which I applied not just to gardening but also to life, and is really useful. But I'm proud that I'm just self-taught. It started with my dad teaching me in the garden, and yeah, that was great fun. And then the main source of knowledge has definitely been podcasts, books, and YouTube, and learning from gardeners all around the world. And I find it fascinating. And Liz, there's so much I've learned from you and your garden, and that's the beauty, is that everyone now, it's so easy to share different things, and I love it. So every day, I swear, I'm learning new things about gardening, and I don't see it slowing down ever. Excellent.
I've been gardening for 45 plus years, and I still think I learn something new every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and in terms of knowledge gaps, I definitely have knowledge gaps. I mean, part of me would like to know more about ornamentals with some things, just more of the basics, because I am starting to get those questions in about bulbs and roses and stuff, and they might begin to interest me. I mean, I like roses because you can eat the petals, so that's great, and they smell great. And
rose hips.
Rose hips, of course. But the thing is, in terms of knowledge gaps, more in terms of growing, I think, well, what I am trying to learn more of at the moment are perennial food crops. and the more unusual ones that could hold so much potential for us gardeners here in the UK. And so, yeah, that's what I'm teaching myself at the moment.
So moving on, let's make a cup of tea and we'll come back in a few minutes.
Brilliant.
This is a By the Farm podcast.
So you mentioned some of the more unusual perennial plants that we could grow. Does this link in any way to your looking at food security?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the UK has become, I mean the world, but the UK especially has become really disconnected with food and how important food security is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of people who are a little bit up in the clouds and think everything's great, everything's wonderful, but food security is so important. And if you think of Britain in terms of self-sufficiency, we're so dependent on other countries to get stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because our diets are out of sync with seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, you know, everyone talks about, oh, veganism is the best thing in the world. It's the most sustainable diet. I actually disagree with that. I think the most sustainable diet is local and seasonal food grown using regenerative ways or just from your back garden. But no one is talking about seasonality and how important that is. And one of the many things that inspire me about what you're doing is in terms of approaching self-sufficiency here as you and your family, you adapt your diet seasonally. So you eat what is available and when. And that is the best way, I think, to do that. And if we did look at a more seasonal approach, and what we need is a lot more education and teach people about seasonality. It's no way near being spoken enough about. You know, George Monbiot, he needs to speak more about seasonality. Mm-hmm. He's just gone off on a tangent of foods grown in factories. I don't see his connection with nature there, but I'll get off that rant now. And so, yeah, it's teaching about how important that is, but also I think Britain in the culinary scene is a little bit boring, and we need to show people really exciting ways to use seasonal food. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think there needs to be a real shift with that. And once you do that, it'll be so much easier to then be more self-sufficient and have food security, because we're not aching to have strawberries in January, for example.
Or strawberries in February, like we had last night, but those were frozen.
Exactly. From about 10 metres away.
From about 10 metres away. And so there is that thing about seasonality and food security. It would be really nice if we could find a vegetable that will grow in the open in the UK that really took off as a favourite.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we've set ourselves a challenge there.
I think we might have done.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, there's so many vegetables which I do regard as being underrated. One of those is actually swede. Swede has about half the calories of potatoes.
Mm-hmm. So in America, it's not called swede. No, it's a rutabaga. I think.
Something like that. Rutabaga, or I don't know how you say it, but it has the benefit of actually growing really well in a Welsh climate, and wet, cool, damp. Yeah. And it can be stored outside all through winter, because another thing that you have to think about when it comes to self-sufficiency is how you store and preserve your food. Absolutely. But what I love about growing winter veg is that the storage is in the garden and I only pick what I need. Mm-hmm. And so having a new attitude to winter veg and things like swedes and learning to cook with that effectively holds so much potential, I think, not just for our environment, but also for our diets.
So are we looking at a seasonal, interesting cookbook at some point in the future?
Perhaps. I think it should be married with how to grow as well. But we'll see. I mean, I'm no expert at cooking, but I might learn to be one and have so much fun in the process.
Would that be, yeah.
It would be fun. Huw Whittingstall, you are my hero. And if you're listening now, I would absolutely love to have some lessons from you. Because I actually have great respect for the work he's been doing as well. Such as, the fish fight, the war on plastic, all those kind of things. And he is a great advocate for seasonal food, but we need more people in the mainstream to do that. Yeah. it's gone too far in the wrong direction and we need to bring people back to reality. And also, this is a reason, the reason why this is happening is because people have become so disconnected with nature and the world. And in nature, it's balance, and it's very unbalanced on both sides. And we just need to meet in the middle and then move on, you know?
Yeah. So we were talking about pathways and finding a way through two extremes. We were talking about something entirely different, but it was the same thing of just having two different views and being able to walk through a sensible path through the middle of it.
Exactly. And sometimes the path will take you a bit to the left, and then you've got to go back towards the centre. But yeah, it's always a pathway, and you never quite know which turn you go down next. But it's fun. It's a journey. It's exciting, and even though you don't know, you can influence where you're going.
Absolutely. So, change the subject. We were talking about some of our memories, gardening memories, earlier on, and one of the things that I didn't ask you, and I should have done, is what is your favourite or your most fond memory of gardening?
There's one that really stands out, and it was when I was back in primary school, and I think it was May or June, something like that. And I woke up in the morning and Dad said, "Oh, we need to soak some beetroot seeds to sow tonight." I was like, why would you soak beetroot seeds? And then he explained about helping to aid germination and all of that. And I thought, wow, this is fascinating. And I remember him talking about lukewarm water and all those kind of things. And he said, when you get back from school tonight, we'll plant them. And honestly, it sounds crazy, but me as a kid in primary school, I couldn't wait to go back home to sow those beetroot seeds, because I just found it fascinating that soaking it would help so much, and I wanted to learn more. I was always curious, and I remember going back, and it was one of the most beautiful early summer evenings you could imagine. It was still, there was so much warmth in the sun, and I had a lovely time with my dad sowing those beetroot seeds. And I know it's nothing like glamorous or amazing, but for some reason that memory has really stuck with me.
Huw, thank you ever so much for sharing that. That's really nice.
Yeah, I like it. I like that it's nothing too crazy, because when quite often people think back about memories and they're like, oh, I harvested 10 kilograms of strawberries or something. And for some reason, it's that really humble memory of just sowing some beetroot seeds with my dad. Really has stuck with me.
I'm going to cry in a minute. That was really nice.
I've got you back.
That was really nice. So that was a really nice memory looking back. How about looking forward? What projects have you got in the pipeline that you can tell us about for the next year or so?
The tricky thing about projects is that there are always projects in the pipeline. It's just knowing which ones actually make it to completion. And that's the hardest part, honestly. So, for example, what's going on at the moment, about to start looking for a full-time assistant, and I'm going to create a podcast, and well, I say that, I hope I do. Create an online course, that's another thing, and also start book 3. And book 3, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's going to be more advanced gardening techniques and strategies for people, and I'm really excited. I've already started writing it, and I haven't even planned it out yet.
And you have promised you were not going to do any of that for another couple of months, and you've already started.
It's like you've got to scratch that itch. Make the most of the motivation, because it isn't always there.
Well, that's very true. So, but one of the things that has been there, it has been the motivation to start the Gardening Demystified podcast with me.
Absolutely. So
it is a By the Farm production, but you've really kindly agreed to co-host lots of the episodes with me.
I'm so excited.
So there will be some times when it's just me, but as much as possible, it will be both of us. Do you want to tell us a little bit why you were quite keen to get involved with the idea of Gardening Demystified?
Absolutely. I remember when you mentioned it first, and something inside me just went, yes, I love it. I want to be a part of it, because I like to sometimes follow the crowd. But I also like to follow things which I really believe in and believe will make a huge difference. And something that has frustrated me so much is I feel that a lot of mainstream information is making things overcomplicated. And this isn't helped by a lot of the really big commercial companies that just feed too much information, which makes people believe that my tomatoes won't grow unless I buy this fertilizer, otherwise it's going to be a failure. And it's adding complexity, but it's also adding cost. And so the reason why I'm so excited about Gardening Demystified and just debunking a lot of those misconceptions is that I feel that there are so many excuses out there that people have to not only not even begin gardening in the first place, but to actually give up gardening. And there are so many different reasons. And for example, in terms of entry points, a lot of people think that growing your own food is expensive. Growing your own food will literally take all of your time and you'll just be able to enjoy very little in return. Also that there's no point because why grow food when you can just buy it in a supermarket? And there's also things then which make people give up because they don't know how to manage their time or manage their space, and they've bitten off more than they can chew, and then they're overwhelmed and they give up. And I find that so devastating when I hear stories of people who have just given up. And I always like to take the opportunity to do some market research and find out why. And I keep on pressing down, and it always comes down to one main reason, which is taking on too much and not knowing how to deal with it. Yeah. So yeah, things like that, both with the books and with my videos, I'm really trying to do. And now with this podcast hosted by you, it's going to make a huge difference.
Huw, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
For being part of this today. And before we finish, Huw, is there one last thought you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I've been really fascinated by how to become more productive as a gardener. And I know some people are like, oh no, but I enjoy gardening because it's a chance to relax and escape from the world. And I do that as well. But sometimes there are pinch points in the season where you've just got to get some things done to free you up to then be able to garden and relax. And so productivity has been a huge fascination of mine. And the thing that I've started using a lot, and I want to share this with you, is to learn how to use checklists. And they have been quite revolutionary for me recently. So for example, if you created a checklist template which gave you a list of maybe 4 or 5 things that needs to be done every time you head to the garden or the allotment, get those ticked, you then start creating a routine, you create a habit, and you also feel productive because you're ticking things off and you're getting things done. So yeah, just a thought. I mean, I'll go in more detail, perhaps in another podcast about that and productivity. But just for you as the audience listening, have a think about using checklists to start freeing up your time to feel more productive. And what I'd start off with, if you don't know where to begin, is to write a list of all the jobs in the garden that take 5 minutes or less and add those to a checklist and get those done before you start anything else. And I guarantee by the end of ticking off all those lists, you'll feel a huge weight lift off your shoulders.
Brilliant. Huw, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And so, wherever you are in the world and whatever you've got planned for today, I hope it's a good one. And I also hope you'll join us again next time.
The podcast you've been listening to is a By the Farm production, all rights reserved.